Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Sarah Scoop Show. I'm so excited because we have Dr. Ali here today, and she's here to talk all sorts of things and including lots of amazing tips, especially based around relationships and just life in general. So thank you, Dr. Ali, for being here. I would love for you to just introduce yourself for our audience and tell who you are and everything that you can say about you in just a short little intro.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. So like Sarah was saying, my name's Ali, and my background is I'm a speech therapist and behavior analyst. And I started working with kiddos on the autism spectrum. And from there, I just became obsessed with social skills and teaching it. And I started to realize, a lot of adults don't actually have these skills that I'm breaking down for these younger kiddos. So I've become obsessed with helping people with their communication, because I think it's a thing that we do all the time, but we don't think about how it's affecting, especially relationships. And I tend to work a lot with women on sort of the people-pleasing approach to communication, because although it's very nice in the moment, sometimes we resent the person later and there's big communication breakdowns.
And what do you recommend just for like your tips and tricks for those new relationships that are starting like with the new year? I know a lot of people are probably looking for new relationships, or it might be part of their goals and things like that for the new year. What are your tips and just tricks and things for this to build success at the start?
Yeah, so I think one thing is to be super honest with yourself before you're even starting a relationship. What matters to you? What type of person are you looking for? And then getting really clear on what your boundaries are. So for me, I remember when I first started dating my partner, I didn't have that great of a gym schedule. And then I started sleeping at his place. And then all of a sudden I was like mean because I wasn't getting to the gym. So that sounds really little, but something so clear on like what you kind of need to keep happening for you, and communicate that early and often. Same with work. Maybe there's some work commitments that you have, just communicate it early and often. You can do it in a really kind way. It doesn't have to be like, I have this and that's all I'm doing. But just let people know. I think it's harder when you're first starting and then all of a sudden you're in the relationship and it's like, whoa, you shifted. I feel like you were pretending at first.
And before people enter a relationship, we hear this all the time, like you should be confident and happy with yourself. How do you suggest that people get to that point? Like, do you suggest certain practices or routines or things like that for people to get to the point where they're ready for a relationship?
For sure. So one thing I do with clients I work with is kind of like past relationship, like discovery. And we kind of talk a lot about what fights were you having? What breakdowns were you having? And just getting really clear on, fights are a two-way street. So where could you have been attributing but you didn't even realize? And again, a lot of it comes down to the way you're communicating things. Body language is so important. Like once we start to dig a little bit more, we notice sometimes like if I'm already stressed, my body language is coming across kind of confrontational and a little, it can come across a little nasty, but you don't realize it. So really getting clear on like who you are and how you present. And then if you want to change any of those things, I think that's part of it. And I also think definitely like confidence and feeling good about yourself. But I am a firm believer too, once you're in the right and like good, healthy relationship, that person's also helping you do a lot of self-development because they tend to reflect for you stuff that you do need to address in your life.
And when it comes to confidence, I feel like this is one of those questions that you mentioned you worked with a lot of women. I feel like a lot of women are always looking for ideas or practices or things they can do to build their confidence. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, great question. So I think that's one of those words that we're always like, I should be more confident or confidence. And I'm sure we've all come across the woman that just like exudes confidence. I don't know if any people watched Queen's Gambit, but there was something like super sexy about her, right? She was so into what she was doing. So I think that's a big part of finding your confidence is what really lights you up, what makes you super excited, and do more of that. Because the more you're in the activity that really makes you happy, the more confident you'll feel. And you'll also have more to talk about. You know, I think that comes up a lot on with dating too. Like, I don't know if I really have anything to talk about. And then you sort of get in your head and then all those, you know, negative thoughts come in. So really find stuff that you enjoy and do it.
And something I've noticed from a lot of our listeners and watchers for the Sarah Scoop Show is they want like hardcore takeaways that they can just implement right away. With, again, like the new year, I know a lot of people are looking at self-help books, relationship books, things like that. Do you have any books that you would just recommend is they're important for people to read or that you have found to be profound or just have a good impact on people?
Yeah, for sure. So my favorite book ever is The Body Keeps Score. It's by Bessel, I'm going to butcher his last name, like Vanderkopf, but it is all about what trauma does to your body. And he beautifully explains that trauma doesn't just have to be, you know, something very intense like abuse or, you know, kind of what a lot of people think of trauma. It could be little micro things where you didn't feel attached or you didn't feel calm in a moment, and all of that can add up. So he talks about that, and then he talks about ways to move past it. So therapy or yoga. He talks about improv. So that was unbelievably impactful for me because I did not realize the amount of my sort of childhood past stuff was now coming into my adulthood. And that just opened up the doors for me. And then I love anything by the School of Life. They're out of the UK, and they're just, it's like psychology for everyone. They just really write up basic forms of psychology in a way that's super digestible. So I would recommend those.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And we're going to talk a little bit about a show that a lot of people watch that is all about relationships. So with Married at First Sight in their new season, we'd love to hear your take on the couples that were paired, how you feel like the experts did putting them together, really just your initial thoughts on this new season.
Okay. So I'm literally pulling out my notes because I was taking notes during the episode. So I love Clara and Ryan. I just think they're so cute. I love how I just love how real she is and like who she is. She talks about that. I love that she's a flight attendant. And I actually think the fact that he's so sort of, Ryan seems very regimented. He has a routine. He was like working out. He was at his computer. He, I think, has the same smoothie every day. I actually wonder if her being a flight attendant is going to be beneficial to them because he'll still have those times to sort of go into his routine and then also be with her. He might like that on and off thing. So Virginia and Eric, I don't know. So in the preview, Virginia is drinking a lot and Eric's saying, I wouldn't want someone who drinks a lot. I also, though, I want to give her benefit of the doubt. It's like her bachelorette party. She's about to marry a stranger. Like, maybe that's not typical behavior. But I don't know if that's going to be, she seems like a really like fun party girl. And he's made statements that, you know, he's kind of past that. I want to say he's 34. So who knows? Another couple is Paige and Chris. So Paige, I just thought she was like the sweetest girl, super hardworking, kind of have a girl crush on her. And then Chris, the people actually who were doing like the review on the kickoff special were kind of hating on him a little bit. And I get it. He said some comments that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like he said he wanted someone submissive and he said he wanted 7 children and all these things. But I do wonder if he had some adversity in his life. Like he said at one point, he was homeless and living in a car. So I wonder if a lot of that's like an exterior that kind of keeps him together and going. But when he meets his person, something softens. So I feel pretty good about them. And they both have a very strong religious background. So I think that also grounds them. So I feel good about them. Brianna and Vincent. So Brianna's an engineer, which I just think is super badass. And she's also stunning and seems like she is this total, you know, like feminine. She really seems to do this feminine, masculine thing amazingly. And then Vincent just seems like a total sweetheart. The only thing I can see being an issue is Vincent has talked about numerous times in his interview how he really wants kids. And Brianna didn't say she didn't want kids or anything, but she also said she seems to be in a place where she'd rather be living life. And then when that happens, it happens. So as long as Vincent's need for kids doesn't supersede her need to just sort of see where this goes and enjoy life, I see it going really well. Okay, and then the last one is Haley and Jacob. Okay, so they have a pretty large age difference. They are 10 years. And Jacob, I was laughing, he's so into 80s movies. He has like a full DVD collection. He had like 80s lights. Like he's really into it. So I think it's all going to depend on how Haley takes these things. Like, is she going to see that as like, okay, this is just a funny quirk that like maybe I'll get really into 80s movies? Or is she going to sort of see some of his more quirky behaviors as like standoffish? She also said he only eats steak and eggs. So is she going to see this as an opportunity to be able to like teach him and explore new foods? Or is she going to find it a little bit too, like too much of a wall? Same with him. Is he going to be open to changes? Those are the only things I'm seeing that might be a little tough. Like she seems very adventurous. He seems like he's like, I am ready to get married. I'm ready to have kids, buy the house, do the whole thing. So I hope they're able to find a medium. But as always, I think the experts are awesome. I nerd out on watching them, like their conversations on who they're going to pick. And, for the most part, even if the couples don't work out, as I watch the season, I get why they were paired. It's just, everyone's human. Are they willing to come out of their shell? So sorry, Sarah, that was a lot. Any questions?
No, that was awesome. That's what we wanted. We wanted your thoughts and just a breakdown because I know it just started. So we're right in the beginning of the season and it'll be exciting to watch and see kind of how it unfolds. But I think all of your like takes on the different couples was right on, and that is great to hear. As a relationship expert, what is your thoughts on the entire concept of Married at First Sight? Like, do you feel like it is, set up for success, or is getting married at first sight not something you would recommend? Like, what's your thoughts as a relationship expert?
Yeah, so I have been watching the show from the beginning because I just love that it was like a social experiment. And initially, I definitely was like, this is just, like a Bachelor spinoff. I don't think this is real. But I think, the more we progress in society and just how things are changing, I also didn't think I could make a friend off of Instagram. And I actually have really good friends now from Instagram. So I do think there's something around the way we're viewing how you come together is changing. Online dating is so common now, right? There used to be a stigma around that. So I think that it can work. But again, the people have to be very open. And I do think they have to have done a lot of work. So I was on another podcast and they asked me if I would have been a good match for Married at First Sight. And I thought about it and I was like, no, I would have been terrible because I am a person that, needs a little bit to open up. I probably would have been on like week 5 of marriage before my partner really knew who I was. So again, I think, the experts do this, pick people who really are able to be out there and also are able to be filmed. I mean, that's a thing in itself too.
And I know you mentioned a little bit about like the online dating and things like that. How have you noticed just coaching and all of that through your work, the way dating is changing? Like, how have you noticed it change? And what do you tell like your clients so that they can be successful with the way that it kind of has changed, especially in this last year?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, like a year ago, I would have never been suggesting Zoom dates. My advice was always to, try to see the person as quickly as possible because I feel like you can just get stuck in those conversations, right? And you also can get stuck in interview mode where you're just constantly asking, oh, so like, tell me about your family. Tell me about this. So I think, online dating is the reality, especially right now. And I really am now starting to see a lot of benefits. I think I mentioned before that I work with adults on the spectrum, and like for them, the ability to type out their answers and kind of think more is so great because it alleviates that pressure of the first impression in person, and then they meet them and they're like, oh, this guy is awesome. I also think anyone with, you know, a little social anxiety or that confidence of the first impression, there is something really nice about the online dating initial correspondence. I would say the negative side to that, though, is some people will view online dating like a menu. Like, for example, Chris at Married at First Sight, when he was talking about his ideal woman, it was like, she's hot, she's really good in bed, she's driven, she's like, he just kind of had a list. And I think before online dating, when we saw these huge profiles with all these like amazing things, people weren't as concerned as the of the physical list and the more like fake list. Now it's like, you know, you can go on and it's like, okay, he went to a good school, he makes this much money, like, so you can sort of judge yourself out of a good match before it even happens, which is why I like this show so much, because that can't happen.
Yeah, it's like they've already, the matchmakers and the experts and all of that have done the work for the people. So you're right. They've got to be open and see why they were matched.
Right.
So Dr. Ali, also you have a great social presence. You share a lot of amazing tips on your Instagram for people that want to kind of follow along with you. And just, you know, if you want to share a little bit about the things that you share on there and how you can be a resource and kind of, you know, who you think would benefit from following along and learning more about the tips you share.
Amazing. Thanks, Sarah. So my Instagram is the Behavioral Speechy, so like behavior analytics and speech therapy. And again, I talk a lot about things that either is going to help your communication or break your communication. So I talk about what communication type you might be, ways to increase connection in relationships, both romantic and friendships. You know, it's COVID. It's difficult to know how to maintain friendships. And then also I put a lot of just straight social skills out there. So general practices like, if you are on a date or even with people, you don't want to ask a bunch of close-ended questions like, you know, do you like pizza? Did you have a good weekend? It's so much of a nicer question to be like, tell me about your weekend. I'm curious why you chose to be a vet. Was that something from childhood? You know, like you can make them more open-ended. So there's that. And then my website is Ali Arena Communications, and I'm launching a Foundations of Effortless Communication course in January. And then a feminine dating school, which is communication as well. It's all about being empowered in how you communicate, also in January. So you can find both of those there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Ali. You've shared some really great tips and ideas and loved your recap of Married at First Sight. We will all have to follow along this season and see what happens, and also follow along with you for awesome ways to improve communication. So thank you again for joining the Sarah Scoop Show, and I hope we can connect again soon.
I hope so too.